Hello everyone, and welcome into a new series that I think I'm going to be calling Free Flights, which is going to be an opportunity for me to hop in a DCS server and fly 3 flights with the intent of achieving as much as possible. Whatever happens, happens, and we're going to see what the outcome of these 3 flights on this Tuesday are going to be on Contention Cold War, currently in their E2 scenario on Syria. I have had a look at the map and the chat as well. It appears that there is combat air patrol needed in the TS region, which is about 69 nautical miles just northeast of our current position. I haven't quite yet decided what the format is ultimately going to be, but I think that for the first flight of the 3 each day, we might as well do a full startup. And we're going to be in the Mirage F1EE. The intent of this, I think, is going to be something kind of like streaming content that's saved for, just something you can watch on YouTube. Maybe some second screen content. And also a good opportunity for me just to get back in the habit of uploading and editing and practicing some of the skills we've got as we turn off the alert siren and we turn on the batteries. Next steps, we have to turn on the fuel pumps. It's been so long since I actually learnt this startup procedure that I actually know how to do it, but part of me doesn't know what I'm doing. I do know that once that cover flips back down, that means that the engine is primed, but you can double check it by checking the BP light on this side here, which I believe is just above HUILE, which means that we have fuel pressure in the system. I also have just put the flaps down to full and set the radar to 35 nautical miles range. Need to run the starter motor for 2 seconds or so. So 1 potato, 2 potato, and let go. And wait until the RPMs cross 300. And advance the throttle. Make sure that everything catches. Once the engine goes past about 2,700 RPMs, you can be fairly confident that it has started. Close up the canopy and pressurize. Turn on the remaining electrical systems except for the police light because we don't need it. Reset the circuit breakers so that the warning lights go off, meaning that the last warning light that's here is the cap light, which means that we need to spin up our gyroscopes by setting this to GM and M on this here. And I think, now this is how, I don't know if you guys have played DCS for long enough, or if you have a lot of DCS modules and you have startup things that you do. I have always flicked this switch, which I think is on the cabin pressure, temperature control rheostat from A to M. Because it's been so long since I've actually learnt the startup procedure, I don't actually know if you're supposed to do that. Not that it really matters. ALCM for a faster line, I'm pretty sure. And then hit the star button? No? ALCM, hit it. You've got to be in position mode, and then we can see once this gets to 0999, we're aligned on the navigation system. Not that it really matters. I don't think we'll be worrying about waypoints today. Set the navigation system to N. The standby horizon uncaged. 2 radar modes in the Mirage F1. I call them E mode and D mode. E mode is I think calculation of radar elevation by degrees, but I might be wrong. Anyway, if you twist this knob over to the left a little bit and then twist it back again, the radar switches to D mode, which means that by controlling the antenna elevation, you can actually take your altitude. So let's pretend that we're airborne here. if we're pursuing a target that's 15 nautical miles away and is at, say, 10,000 feet, and we're at 5,000 feet, we can add 5,000 feet to our altitude, set the target designation controller on the target, and then hold down the lock button, except that's the vertical scan button. Radar's not hot yet, so it doesn't really matter too much. And besides that, we don't even have any radar-guided missiles. We have Magic Ones, which I usually take over the equivalent AIM-9s that are available on Contention when they're available. And I have a really good reason as to why I do that. More specifically, I think that Magic missiles look cooler than AIM-9 Sidewinders. You can leave your comments down below as to whether or not you agree. And on my fuselage, not visible at the moment, is a 530 EM. Which, in fact, let me check. Is it an EM or an EF? It is... Okay, it's an R530 FIR. So it's a non-super Matra, just a Matra 530 with infrared capabilities. I'm going to turn on the master arm on the ground because this is a simulation game and no one's going to get me in trouble for it, and I might forget to do it later. Turn on the IFF, turn on the nose wheel steering and automatic shock cone position. Check our alignment, looks hunky-dunky. Set the navigation system to nav, and then we'll forget about it for the rest of the flight because we won't be using it. Let go of the parking brake, and we are ready to fly an aeroplane, except for the fact that I haven't turned my HUD on. There we go. Countermeasures set to single. Perfect. We are at Aldemir Airport. Contention is definitely one of my favourite servers going around at the moment. I love both their modern and their Cold War scenarios. I think I prefer Cold War in general. I have spent several years of my DCS career over the past, I don't know, since 2022, 2021. I've been covering competitive DCS matches, so people who play DCS not necessarily for roleplay purposes, but people who are actually engaging with DCS to win, you know. They're playing it like it's a game, so they're trying their very hardest within the confines of the system and taking advantage of all of the different quirks of the engine to ensure victory. And as a result, I feel like I've watched a lot of BVR within DCS. As me and another aircraft in classic Contention fashion line up on opposite ends of the runway, because air traffic control. Who's got the time? They look like another Mirage F1. Anyway, I find the performance of Fox 3 missiles in DCS to be a little bit odd at the moment. Particularly when compared to at least the way I used to see things 3 or 4 years ago. Which is to say, it feels like the drag and effect of wind resistance at low altitudes on missiles has just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse over the years. To the point where the range of no escape on an AIM-120 AMRAAM for the at deck altitude, so let's say below 7,000 feet, is like even less than 7.5 nautical miles, sometimes all the way down to like 3.5 nautical miles, and it just doesn't feel right. Notching, as we are all aware, and your most pedantic friend within your circle of friends will unhesitantly tell you that the notching as depicted in DCS is not necessarily an accurate representation of actual missile tactics to be used in real life. Which the obvious answer to that is, and of course we have raised our flaps and our landing gear, and we are flying north to go cover that airfield. We don't need to treat DCS as necessarily an accurate representation of modern air combat, because I don't think we really know what modern air combat is going to look like. Kind of like how we're not 100% sure on what... And let me just make sure that the volume's not too high on SRS. Just going to bust down the volume on SRS a little bit. The radio voices that you hear in the background are other players, and we are competing against other players, so all the targets you see are going to be people. But stepping back, modern air combat is kind of like modern sea combat in that it's been so long since we've seen peer adversarial conflict that it almost feels as if we're not entirely sure what modern air combat's going to look like. We can make educated guesses, of course, but I certainly don't think that modern AMRAAMs, or even AMRAAMs from 20 years ago, would be running out of steam and sputtering out of effectiveness in ranges under 10 nautical miles. One of the biggest tragedies of this gradual changing of the INS and all its qualities of the missiles, at least from anecdotal evidence and my personal experience, is the effect that it's had on the F-14 Tomcat for DCS. Because the AIM-54 Phoenix has just been buried in its effectiveness. Enormous notch windows, very poor tracking at anything other than high altitudes. The drag, just the moment it drops below 20,000 feet, it goes below 1,000 knots, and anything that's below 1,000 knots is functionally not going to kill anything. It's to the point where if you want to get kills with Phoenixes, you almost want to shoot them at close range and low, and just take advantage of the fact that that rocket motor fires for such a long time, and can actually pull a couple of Gs, but at long range, high altitude combat, which is exactly what the AIM-54 is designed for, it is just anemic, and as a result, it has kind of rendered the F-14 into a platform that will almost always appear alongside the F-18 with Sparrows, and yet be inferior in every single way. Which is understandable, the F-18 is way more modern, and servers like Contention and Heatblur's Cold War, I think, are working on systems where things like the F-14A early can be occupied for ticket costs, which is good. It's interesting that the dynamic is shifting around a little bit about the planes that naturally fit with other planes. I think that lots of people were expecting the MiG-29 to be a real contemporary to the F-16, or at least the F-18 that we have, whereas I think that with the relative complexity and the lack of ergonomics of these Russian airframes, it almost feels as if the MiG-29 feels a little bit more comfortable tangling with F-4 Phantoms, F-14s. I think there's a little niche, you know, a niche that hasn't quite been explored of the later Cold War, but early fourth generation conflict zones. And I know that there was a experiment run on Contention not too long ago on the Persian Gulf with relatively contemporary Fox 2 and Fox 1 missiles, AIM-7Fs and AIM-9 P3s or P5s, I forget. And that felt like really good fun, especially when combined with the point-costed MiG-29s and F-14s, because when you've got access to contemporary or semi-contemporary weapons in platforms like the F-4 and this beautiful thing, the Mirage F1EE, then you can really take down those. You're not defenseless against those platforms, but they still represent a threat, and there's something desperately exciting about that, at least in my own personal opinion. But please do let me know down below, because I'm desperately curious. I love taking the temperature of what's going on in the DCS community, and speaking of taking the temperature, we're gradually getting close to the front line. Looks like my teammates Heatblur, Harlock, IW, Voss, and I Clipson are in MiG-21s, Su-25s, and are defending this airfield, which isn't Al Quasar, it's Shayrat. Al Quasar is over here, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing it correctly. 336 for 15. 3, 3, 6 for 15. And they are at relative co-altitude. We might actually be able to pick them up on radar here. No joy, but we'll keep an eye on the scope. Three, 2, 8, 13, 6. So if we do see them, they should appear halfway up the scope-ish, seeing as we're at 35 nautical miles on the scope range, and we are within the search zone, but we are at low altitude. The only negative that I really think there is surrounding the Mirage F1, which is other than this, one of my favourite modules, is that the modelling of the radar has left a little bit to be desired. It feels like that this noise pattern that we get on the radar scope has been in a work in progress phase for, in fact, I'm at 3,000 feet. Let's increase our scope up by 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we'll do that. Just give us a slightly higher chance of picking up any of these bogeys. And we're speeding up now because we're within 10 nautical miles. The noise pattern on the Mirage F1's radar, I'm pretty sure, is not simulated in any way. I think it might just be like a moving PNG or something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. Picking up visual tracking, 343 for 9.5, 10,000 feet. Let's increase our radar scope up by 7. And we have leaning back through my headrest, somewhere around 2,000, 10,000 feet in this direction. 350, 8.6 for 10,000. Going cold. We're decently fast now, but all three of these targets are going cold. Let's just see where our teammates are on the map. Okay, we're ahead of all of them, and we're past the stronghold, so we are just going to have to be careful here that we don't take a man pad. 341 for 15.4, 12,000 feet, 326, and I see him. Right. Let's get fast and see if we can make something happen. With our first flight of the day, we've still got plenty of fuel, 2,700, I believe that's in litres. It is in litres. My combustible. 356 for 7.2 cold. Just have to check we're not getting too close to Hama Airfield, because if we do, we'll get exploded. Okay, getting a little bit too close to Hama. So let's just pull back a little bit. The heat seekers I'm equipped with are rear aspect only, so we won't be able to do any shooting on the merge with these F4 pilots, and if they're good enough, they do have access to their bore sight modes, which means that they can get some cheeky head-on shots with aim 7s if I'm not careful. Goodness knows I've done it dozens of times. And if you're looking for a tutorial on how to use the bore sight mode in the F4 Phantom, then may I recommend my own tutorial, which contains some factional inaccuracies, but if you follow the steps as given to you, it will still work. Interestingly enough, on our scope, we've also got a AC-135 MPRS. That looks like it might be a hostile factory or something like that. I wouldn't mind dropping some ordnance on that if I could. Maybe in flight 2 of the day, we'll bring along some bombs as well. But yeah, chuck your opinions on missiles in DCS at the moment and what you think of them. Just as a point of general curiosity, what's your favourite? I don't know much about the difference between the SD-10s and the lure-hacked PL-12s that you get on servers like Growling Sidewinder, but between the PL-12s, SD-10s, AIM-120C-5s, and other air-to-air missiles in the game, what do you think is the most effective? What do you think is the least effective? Here's a hot tip for anyone who's having a bit of a struggle playing DCS multiplayer. And I'm no expert, but I can give you guys a couple of tips if you're interested. If you're looking for people to intercept, not only should you use your EWR, but I think it's worthwhile just taking a quick look at the map and understanding where people can spawn and where they're going to want to go to do the things they want to do. Because Hama Airfield is so close to the front line, it's unlikely that they're going to be spawning here, but it is more likely that they are going to be landing, rearming, and refueling here. I suspect the closest air bases that they can use are probably either Bas el Assad or Abu al-Dahir. So, if we want to anticipate potentially finding someone to give the business, then we can trace this line from those airports towards Hama, which they'll probably use as navigation reference, and potentially intercept them along the route. A caveat to this series, though, is that whatever happens, happens. And anyone who has watched me play DCS on stream or on other platforms, or has played DCS with me, will know that I have an incredible propensity and unique ability to destroy aircraft in interesting and unique ways, potentially unfathomably so. So, these episodes may take a long time, or they may take a no time. Whichever way it goes, we'll have some short days, and we'll have some long ones, I think, but it's 3 flights. Takeoff, landing, or death. An F5E131 for 31,000 at 7,000 feet coming towards us. That's probably one of those airframes that's slowly making its way towards Hama. Okie dokie, we're just going over the top of a FARP here. In this particular contention scenario, I don't think we're at risk of being man-padded here, but it's worth keeping an eye out. Only 15 flares on the beloved Mirage F1. The Syria map is probably one of my favourites, but I would love to see servers like Contention use a little bit more of it. It feels like this exact line of distinction where the front line is right here between Palmyra and Rene Mouad is where 99.8% of the fighting in DCS happens, and I never get to do much except on servers like Flashpoint Levant in the northern areas, and I never get to fly out of Incirlik as much as I want. Which I said to my Turkish barber today when I was getting my hair cut, and he corrected me on how to say it, but I don't remember how he said it, so... Small victories. My local barber is Turkish and is wonderful, but also very enthusiastic, I think we'll say. For anyone who's curious about my setup, I'm using a track IR for head tracking. In my right hand, I have a VKB Gunfighter Pro Mark IV, and in my left hand, I have a Virpil Mongoose T50 CM3 throttle, both of which are fantastic, which they should be because they cost a lot. I've never had the chance to get my hands on anything made by Moser, but I know that they're making the force feedback sticks at the moment, and I watched a really cool video where the force feedback of the stick was actually being used to simulate the resistance effect. You guys will know the proper term, but it's what the F-16 uses. You know how the side stick on the F-16 is not like a joystick that you can pull particularly far, but rather it's a it's more of an effect sensor that only moves a couple of degrees in either direction, and you can use your force feedback stick to make it so that it pushes back like that, and that's such a cool feature. I'd love to get my hands on a force feedback stick, but I just don't. If someone gave me one today, I wouldn't even be able to use it just because my desktop's out of space. Okay, we're going active here now. That's an F4 Phantom. You can tell by the fact that it's 2 triangles in a row, but it's too fat to be a MiG-21. We're gonna warm up our fuselage missile. it takes a short while to get happy. It is rear aspect only, but it can pull quite a few Gs. Unfortunately, we have picked up a second bandit here, which is the F5. Mirage F1 has the unique ability of you being able to stick your cockpit, your pilot entirely out of the cockpit. If this F4 has only just taken off from Hammer Airfield, I'm going to assume it's full of fuel, which means it's probably not going to be turning all that well. But I have no idea where this F5 is. I, however, have had time to burn a little bit of fuel. We want to keep the plane out of the zone where it beeps us up. Ah, no! And there's the F5. Of course, of course. Well, I told you, it was going to end the way it ended. And today's flight, number 1, is going to be an ejection. And what better way for Airshow to start a new series? Alright guys, let's get out of this one and get ready for flight number 2. Welcome in everyone, welcome to life number 2. For flight number 2, we'll be taking off at the same airport in a Mirage F1 EE again, but this time, seeing as we have verified that the route over to the factory is accessible, then we are going to bring us some bombs, along with the Magic 1 and the 530F that we have on our fuselage. Looks like we've got just a 2-minute takeoff delay timer to wait for here. And I like the takeoff delay timer. I think it was a smart idea, especially with the dynamic spawn system and hot starts becoming much more prevalent. That having it as an option is a great idea. I still think that you should cold start your aircraft at least once every session that you play in DCS. Keep your skills sharp. And I'm well aware of the irony of me saying this when I specifically said that I have completely forgotten what certain switches in the cockpit of the Mirage F1 during the startup procedure. Never mind, never mind. When we're up in the air as well, we're just going to take a quick look at the Mirage F1's bombing table so that we can set a reasonable sight depression, though I can tell just from memory that I'm probably going to end up calculating the same kind of sight depression that I usually do, which is approximately minus 120 degrees. Carrying Mark 83's 1,000-pound bombs. We'll see if we can drop them on a factory and destroy it. The visibility in the Mirage F1 often gets criticised, particularly forwards-facing. It's interesting because this narrow pane of glass at the front, with a slightly more bulbous visibility area over to the sides, it kind of reminds me of a Focke-Wulf 190, if you guys remember that. I always felt as if the Focke-Wulf 190 had slightly strange forwards visibility, and I always felt as if almost every flight simulation game that has the FW190 has the pilot sitting in a weird spot, either sitting too far forwards and down, or too far backwards and up, and neither position feels like it's the right one to take best advantage of the forwards visibility of the 190. That might just be a skill issue on my part. I have dumped dozens and dozens and dozens of hours into the MiG-21, which is an airframe lots of people criticise for having less than spectacular forwards visibility. And I can't blame them, but at the same time, I used to think that the MiG-21's forwards visibility was fantastic until I had the brief and rare moment of self-reflection where I thought to myself, hey, you know what? Maybe I think it's easy because I've had a lot more practice than other people. Rest assured that such moments of personal insight will be few and far between. We're looking to head pretty much bang on north. We'll be dropping our bombs from an altitude of approximately 2,000 feet above the impact site. So let's have a quick sticky beak at our bombing tables while we gain altitude here. The Mirage F1's checklist only has bombing tables for the SAMP 250s, if I remember correctly. Yes. But they kind of carry over to other bombs-ish. The purposes of what we're doing, then we can treat it as a guide. Okay, 500 knots dive at minus 20 degrees. Dropping at 2,000 feet. 115. Let's give it a little bit more than that and say that we will go for 120. Okay, 120 degrees of drop. Set the fusing for the bombs to instant and set the drop mode to CPC so that it's one bomb per drop as opposed to salvoing them. Now if we select our bombs, fuse for fuselage, voil for wing, select them both. Actually we don't need fuselage, so wing bombs. And you can see our sight is depressed to 120 degrees. We are set up for dropping the bomb, man. The MiG-21's probably the airframe that I have spent the most amount of time flying, and remains by far one of my favorites. Definitely worth picking up, but a lot of DCS modules, particularly the older ones, are definitely showing their age a little bit. The texturing in things like the F-86 Sabre, I don't own the MiG-15, but I do own the MiG-19. And the MiG-21, it's really just looking quite average now. The textures in this plane are pretty good. I don't have my system settings maxed out just because my computer's not brilliant, but we make do with what we can. I know that they're saying that there's some progress being made on the MiG-21's beautification upgrade, and I hope that we see it this year, but I have no idea what we can truly expect to be coming out of Eagle Dynamics and its subsidiaries over the next year. I know lots of people have been hypothesizing that the Vulcan update is going to make the RASBAM modules not work anymore, though I have had people who seem to know what they're doing. Rest assured, I don't know what I'm doing, but people who seem to know what they're talking about say to me that Vulcan's not going to change the accessibility of the RASBAM modules nonetheless. It is just a ticking time bomb of when eventually Eagle Dynamics introduces one of those bugs that fucks up a plane and then it's not going to work. I have just about every single DCS module there is, with a couple of exceptions. I'm missing a few of the Warbirds, I don't own any of the trainers, and I don't have the Mirage 2000 or the MiG-15. I nearly bought the Mirage 2000, but actually bought the Mirage F1 instead when the new Mirage F1 was new. I was apprehensive about this plane. For some reason, it just didn't quite grab my imagination. And it didn't inspire me. I remember wishing that they had made a Mirage 3 or something like that instead. Just because a little bit more Australian relevance and heritage. I didn't really know anything about what the F1 had done in battle. But since having it be added to DCS, I have fallen in love with it. I cannot wait for the F1M. Though, of course, we are going to have to... let's see. We don't need that to be that loud. The funniest thing about the F1M is going to be how simultaneously modern and how simultaneously not modern it is. Just as we're going to have CCIP on an airframe, but we're not going to have any IFF capabilities. Though I have been playing a little bit of Falcon BMS, and one of the most interesting things that I've been doing in Falcon BMS is playing the Korean campaigns flying F-16 Block 40s, and of course the Block 40 lacks the, in air quotes, comb at the front of the nose, which gives its IFF abilities. And any of you who fly the F-16, and I'm sure most of you who fly the F-16 will know this already, but if you fly the F-16, if you look just down the nose a little bit, you'll see those little objects that they call the comb, which is the IFF antennas on the front of the F-16, and the Block 50 that we have in DCS, but of course in BMS you get a bunch of different other block models, including the Block 40, which contains one of the coolest modifications to an airframe, that being the War HUD, which is wide angle rasterized, I think, so that it can display nav FLIR data, or at least it can display the nav FLIR on the HUD, and other things like the missing IFF comb and conformal fuel tanks and all that sort of thing. It's one of my biggest wishes. If I could change anything about the culture at Eagle Dynamics, in fact, if I could change anything about the culture at Eagle Dynamics, it would be everything. But if I could only change one specific thing, I would encourage Eagle Dynamics to be, and we've selected our bombs now, we are armed and we are getting ready to make our drop. I would encourage them to be less strict about saying that something can't be on a module because it wasn't on that specific version of that thing in real life. There's the factory. I know that it cheesed a lot of people off, me especially, the refusal to do things like put Mavericks or AIM-9s onto, like 4 AIM-9s onto the F5, because the F5 that's in BCS is a specific F5. It's a Swiss aggressor trainer, as far as I'm aware. And yeah, if they were a little tiny bit less stubborn when it came to just making a few little allowances just to make us have access to a few cool little extra things, then I'd be well up for it. Okay, we're at 5,000, rather we're at 500 knots, exactly on speed, and we need to do a 20-degree dive, so we need to fly just a bit further. Hopefully we don't negative G for too long. Okay, we're on the bomb run. 6, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. BEA beautiful. And if you are considering, how do I get enough points on contention servers to be able to fly MiG-29s and F-14s, destroying factories and depots is one of the best ways to do it. That is quite a good effect on target. Let's make sure I dropped all of them. Cool! We have a C-130 at 076, a 22. Let me just get my map tools out and see what we're contending with here. Okay, 076. Right. Not too much happening around this zone. So what we might do is we might return to base and land, and make sure that at least one of our lives for today is going to be well spent destroying a factory and returning to base safely. The strongholds in Contention definitely feel much more to be the domain of the helicopters. I've never quite been able to crack the pattern in which things spawn within these areas. And on the modern servers, I always fly too close to them and get slapped by man pads, but I'll keep an eye out. I don't think we're in too much trouble just yet. Looking at these rail lines just makes me think of workers and resources. So many people have tried to explain to me what a semaphore is. The intelligence just won't go into my head. I don't know why. Okay, we have Al Quasar just off the nose. Super close. It's close to the stronghold, but no need to stress about that too much. Let's drop some altitude and see if we can't get ourselves squared away for a quick landing. Good old Al Quasar. I wonder. Al Quasar is one of the most useful airfields in the Syrian map. As I said earlier, it feels like 98% of all fights on the Syria map happen directly along the line between Rene Mouad and Palmyra, which puts Al Quasar right smack bang in the middle of it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the easiest way to destroy a hardened aircraft shelter in the world. No damage to my aircraft, but destroyed aircraft shelter all the same. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and I can teach you how you yourself can get your Mirage F1 capable of doing melee kills. Set the sight to landing mode, and let's see if we can land this aeroplane without it making that beeping noise it makes at you when you do something wrong, like deploying the flaps when you're going too fast. If any of you have ever had the pleasure of attending a Turkish barber before, you'll have to tell me, no, I put everything down too quickly. I told you I was going to do it. You will know the many and varied ways that they take particular care of you. Not the least of which is setting a cotton bud on fire and sticking it in your ears, eyebrow threading, wrapping a hot towel around your face and slapping you on the arms while you've got the world's hottest towel burning a hole through your face. And to be honest, I don't know if I can go back to the vanilla experience anymore. I think I need my haircut to involve a little bit of physical abuse, just so I'm reminded of my place within society. Okay. A little bit firm, but not the end of the world. And we'll deploy our ouverture. Which of course is our drag parachute, and then we can push the drag parachute button forward, which, as far as I can tell by this arrow, deploys your luggage. Excellent. We'll take ourselves off the runway here, and flight number 2 for today, I think we're going to consider an enormous success, as we have maxed out our credit balance. Welcome everyone to flight number 3 of the day. The situation on Contention got a little bit unbalanced and there weren't enough blues in the air to fight. However, on the flip side, there are a lot of people on Heatblur's Cold War. In fact, the teams are quite heavily biased towards the blue team, so I've joined on the Reds in a MiG-21 to see if I can make something happen. Or alternatively, our last flight of the day is going to be pretty interesting. A reminder that whatever happens is going to happen. If I don't get any kills today, we're just going to have to wait and see until we have another go on Thursday as we warm everything up here. On my wings, I have 2 R60s, not R60Ms, the original R60s with Peltier cooling, and 2 R3Rs, radar-guided missiles, which for so many years were wonderfully good. However, we had them stolen away from us when someone pointed out the fact that they had loads of bugs that made them way more effective than they should have been. And that's a rare sight. Check that out. The F1BE, the 2-seater version, which is very easy to spawn in by mistake when you're trying to select an F1CE. So we'll see if this guy respawns once he realizes he hasn't got a gun and none of his key bindings work. Turn on the gun sight, turn off the master caution. The MiG-21, what is there to say about it that hasn't already been said? But the texturing, I mean, have a look at this, you know, looking over your left shoulder and you've got a texture that looks like it's straight out of a 90s MS-DOS game. Just giving it a little beautification update, a little bit of a slap on the arse for its flight model as well would be fantastic. We'll see what happens. Some updated noises would go very well as well. An A4E starting up. We do have the option of bringing the double-racked R60s, though I tend not to do that. Just because the MiG-21 thrives as an aircraft that can accelerate quickly and pull crazy stuff when you're potentially at low speeds. You can use your lift-generating surfaces and your thrust to pull some cool maneuvers. I feel like putting the double-rack launchers just adds a little bit too much drag, for my personal opinion. The irony, of course, being that I have no facts to back that up, other than me saying, trust me bro, it's just vibes. So who knows if it even makes a difference, but it feels like it does to me. And to me, the MiG-21 is a dart that ought to be smooth, supple, and launch towards the enemy with sheer alacrity. Differential braking, of course, because this is a modern aircraft. There are many, many, many reds, many, many blues online, so we are liable to be swarmed by fighters. I do have a belly tank as well. And we'll see what happens. For some of you, you might not even know really who I am. What's the little cartoon airplane in the corner for? My name's Airshow. I'm an airplane VTuber. Which is kind of as cringe as it sounds, but only as cringe as you make it. In the sense that I want to spread my joy for simulation games and flight simulation on the internet. I have decided to do it as a little mascot character. I stream on Twitch and post routinely on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. There'll be links down below to all of that, just in case you're curious for it. And one of my New Year's resolutions, of course, is to put plenty more content on YouTube. But seeing as it's been so many years since I've done it, I need to get used to how everything works again, how to deal with music, what the workflows are like these days, getting everything sounding good and looking as good as it can. So any feedback is, of course, most welcome. We're not in the biggest rush because it would be nice if our radar heats up before we get into a tangle, just so that we can hopefully use our R3Rs. The R3R is pretty obsolete in this era, but I like to bring them partially out of nostalgia and partially out of utility. We'll probably get away with using just one, but because I'm neurodivergent, I don't like airplanes that aren't symmetrical, so I bring two. And of course, there's a lot to be said about the R60, particularly the early model R60. All of the explosive charge of a hand grenade against almost any aircraft with 2 engines. The R60 will typically, about 80% of the time, at least in my experience, will only take out one of the engines. In fact, it very consistently takes at least 2 R60s to actually shoot down an F-14. And an F-4 Phantom can usually take one and at least be in some kind of flyable position. .251 for 6, metrics 1.8, flanking right type small. We could go and have a look. And my radar's on too, so he's out over the ocean. It'll give our radar the best chance it can. And hello, sailor. Okay, IFF tells me he's bad. We're in semi-active. I always like it when servers... Okay, we've lost him, so switching to Emperor. Flash. Against F5s though, 1's enough. The guy was behaving strangely. I wonder if he was having technical problems or something like that. Big shout out to the paid actors for this episode. I was worried I wasn't going to get any kills, so much appreciated that you made me look good for a second there. I don't really know what's going on with the simulation of the MiG-21's radar. It's so old. This switch here controls the low altitude compensation mode, and when you have it switched off you can see the ground effect. I wonder if we got an updated version of the MiG-21, how they would model the radar these days, because the MiG-21 was one of the first third-party modules to actually come out, and as a result, there's a few quirks with it. Interesting quirks as well, like almost every aircraft in DCS, when you do request rearming, copy, they will load your weapons from the center outwards so that you're balanced. But I think the MiG-21 is so old that it still uses the really old way of doing things, where it loads weapons from left to right. I might just be making that up, though. But that's the good thing about making content on the internet, is that you can spread misinformation, and it's a good way of gaining engagement by baiting people into correcting you in the comments. So if it works, it works. We can see the fuel pod's empty W light here flickering on and off, and the fuel gauge is just dipping below 3000. Once that light goes steady, which it is now, that means that the centerline fuel tank is empty. I'm going to press the jettison fuel tank button, which is just behind where my pinky would be on the stick, and the centerline fuel tank button goes off as my fuel tank descends to become a free canoe for the residents of Georgia today. Looks like we've got a contact below us somewhere up ahead. The MiG-21's radar having instant IFF is so incredibly useful. These guys are pretty low, so I'm actually going to dip down just so I don't silhouette myself in case they're Phantoms. I don't know if the Phantoms have AIM-7 E-2s, but if they do, then I don't want to not have a background behind me. 183 for 6. Okay. Type small. Box 1. Box 1 again. He's a little too far. Oh, not far enough. And that's why the R3Rs are good. Because they don't go for flares. Alright. That's 2. And we've got 1 R60 left. 063 for 18. Flanking right. We can take him. Let's check where we are on the map. Make sure I'm not straying into red territory too deeply. Okay, we're along the front lines, which is where we want to be. And in fact, our radar has briefly seen him. No more radar-guided weapons, but at least it gives us a bit of an idea of where to go. You can't tilt the MiG-21's radar left or right at all, so you actually have to point the entire plane at something to interrogate a radar contact, or at least get the targeting cursor onto it. So you can kind of extrapolate out from the information you get what's going on. I just saw a big burst of gunfire up ahead there, but it had traces. An A10 gunfire doesn't have traces, which makes me wonder what is shooting. I see something moving, but I can't tell what it is. I see something else there too. Might be an helicopter. I have no idea what it is, actually. But we have a medium-sized bandit at metrics 5.5. That's what that contrail is up there. Probably already tangling with something else that's friendly. Three to 8 for 11, metrics 4, flanking left. Okay, we have to help with this now. Still got 2,000 of fuel, 2,000, I think it's kilograms, liters? What is the measurement in the MiG-21? 2 tons of fuel left? 289 for 14, metrics 2.9 cold. 289 for 14, metrics 2.9 cold. And thought I saw him for a second. I feel like I'm getting some radar beeps, which is concerning, but I don't see where it would be coming from. 093 for 17. Hot. I'm being chased. I see a bandit over there. I think that's him. Accelerating to attack speed. And it is him. He's flanking right now. 2 bandits, and it looks like both of them are looking for me. The smart thing to do would not to be... The smart thing to do would be to not engage. But I'm flying a MiG-21, and you do not fly a MiG-21 to make smart decisions. No, it's my nemesis, it's an F-86 Sabre, I don't know how to fight these things, I'm so bad at it. I keep trying to energy fight them, but for some reason they have infinite energy. Well, that explains the gunfire, at least. Because those M2s have red traces. Bad time to be flying a plane with no flares. You see what I mean? Oh, no! You're joking, you're joking! Oh, I didn't think there was another one here. And a blaze of glory we go down in. A blaze of glory. Alright. Looks like the stick's not doing anything. Let's get out of Dodge. Oh, well. Thanks, guys, for joining me for 3 flights. I hope you had lots of good fun. I know I did. Don't forget all of my socials down below in case you want to engage with me. I'll be streaming, and I will be in my Discord, on Twitter, and all of the other places you can find me. And I look forward to taking you on another 3 flights somewhere soon. We'll see if we can do better than we did today. Alright, guys, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.